realistic about the current situation and everything, the present. But I'd like to see the heritage shown. Jaguar were not afraid to talk in the past about their heritage, the Le Mans wins back in the 50s, the E-Type in the 60s. This is what added excitement and luster to the brand.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question. That's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and want to have an open discussion.
My name is Patrick Christie's. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. We're 4 days into 2026 and President Trump has already made his mark on the year, carrying out large-scale strikes on Venezuela and sending a clear threat to the Iranian regime. We'll be discussing that and much more on our first show of the year. Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones, will be here, as only 9% of the public think 2026 will play well for Britain. Can Sir Keir Starmer really turn this government around? I'll also be speaking to Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel. I'll get her reaction to events in Venezuela and Iran. Plus, does she regret granting citizenship to Egyptian activist Alaa Abdel Fattah? Deputy Leader of Reform UK and MP for Boston and Skegness, Richard Tice, will join me as Nigel Farage vows to double or quits on the local election spending £5 million, I believe. What does Reform UK need to see in May to constitute a successful year? The Liberal Democrats are launching a fresh bid to force the government into a vote on the UK's membership of the Customs Union. Yes, it's 2016 all over again, folks. Cabinet Office spokesperson for the party, Lisa Smart, will join me later on the show. And former British Ambassador to Iran, Nicholas Hopton, will be here to discuss the Ayatollah Khamenei's crackdown on protesters across the country. Is this the beginning of the end for the regime? As ever, an absolutely packed 90 minutes of politics to come, so do not even think of going anywhere. Our usual Sunday morning paper review will still come, but joining me now is the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones. Mr Jones, lovely to see you this morning. Happy New Year to you. I'm intrigued by the fact that the PM has shown support for the anti-Semite and self-confessed racist Alaa Abdel Fattah, but not persecuted Iranians. Why would that be?
I'm not sure I understand the premise of your question, Camilla, but firstly, Happy New Year. It's nice to be with you. I mean, look, your question on Mr. Al Fattah, I think you're referring to the tweets that he posted a number of years ago. The Prime Minister's already said that it's regretful that the government hadn't seen those when decisions were taken. This was not just an issue under this Labour administration, of course, it was an issue under the Conservatives as well. I think it was Priti Patel as Home Secretary that originally granted British citizenship to Mr. Al Fattah. And as is normally the case, when a British citizen is being detained in those types of circumstances in any country around the world, consular services are made available to them. But of course, his views on those tweets are abhorrent. The government obviously does not support them in any way.
Why then is number 10 saying that he's still welcome in the UK when he's tweeted the following, that all Zionists, including civilians he wished death upon, He said, I'm a racist. I don't like white people, so pee off. He's said about how his heroes have always killed colonialists. And yet, when asked, when all of this was revealed, Number 10 said they still welcomed him to the UK. And I asked the point in reference to the Iranians who are being persecuted right now, because the PM has still kept that tweet on his X feed and yet not posted anything about persecuted Iranians. And I find that quite surprising.
Oh, I see. Well, look, with Mr. Al-Fattah, the important point is that he was granted citizenship by the last Conservative administration. That doesn't mean that we're supportive of the comments he made. As I said, they're abhorrent and they're not.
Well, you've welcomed him into the UK. That sounds pretty supportive.
Well, he was a citizen. Forgive me, this earpiece is just falling out slightly. He's a citizen, and that's why he was treated as a citizen. And we'd be wrong for the government to revoke citizenship from people based on their tweets.
So he's still welcome?
Even if they are as abhorrent as they were in those circumstances. Well, he's a British citizen, and so...
But the word welcome was used.
As I say,
there was an effusive post on X by the Prime Minister welcoming this anti-Semite to the UK. The word welcome was used. Was that the right word to use under the circumstances, as we now understand them?
Well, you know that the tweet that was issued before the Prime Minister had been shown the tweets of Mr. Al-Fattah that you referred to, and the Prime Minister said this morning and previously that he regrets the fact that the government hadn't surfaced those tweets to him or the Foreign Secretary, or indeed the previous Prime Ministers or Foreign Secretaries under the Conservative administration.
This bloke was tweeting the stuff from 2010, and I will ask Priti Patel about it, don't worry, she granted him citizenship. But what does it say about Number 10, that all of these tweets surfaced literally with a basic Google check by journalists within 2 minutes, and yet our own Prime Minister doesn't know this guy's history and gives him a warm welcome back to Britain?
Well, you're right that this was an issue that shouldn't have happened. It was a failing at some point in the process in government. That's why the Foreign Secretary has asked the Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office to answer questions as to why this happened in the first place. Ministers will have understandably assumed that these checks would have been done by officials as part of the process, as a process we inherited as a Labour administration. When it occurred to us that that had not happened, as I say, the Foreign Secretary put in place a review to understand why, to make sure that changes can be put in place to ensure it doesn't
so it was a mistake to welcome him back.
The Prime Minister has been very clear that was unacceptable.
It was a mistake for the Prime Minister to welcome him. OK. That was a mistake.
The Prime Minister himself said this morning.
Right.
He said this morning that he regrets the fact that tweet went out and that he wasn't made aware of the previous tweet, yeah.
No, I would have asked the Prime Minister directly, but he won't do my show, strangely. The PM has claimed that 2026 will see a turn, a corner, and us to feel a sense of hope. Yet a recent YouGov survey reveals that only 9% of the British public think 2026 will be good. Quite staggeringly, 66%, or two-thirds, think that 2025 was a bad year under Labour.
Look, I understand why the public have got a pessimistic view about the future. The Prime Minister does too. Since the banking crisis in 2008, living standards have not improved in the way the public expect them to. And they've been promised time and time again, whether from David Cameron and Nick Clegg, we're all in this together, or from Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage, that Brexit was going to transform the UK economy and improve people's living standards. All the way through, they've been promised these types of things and it's not been delivered. So it's totally understandable that the public are angry about that. And they're not sure whether governments are able actually to deliver a better country that improves their living standards. We say that that is not true, that mainstream politics can make a difference to people's lives, and we're absolutely focused on delivering it. And 2026 is going to be a year where people start to feel the benefit of some of the decisions that we started to take in our first 18 months in government.
Really? According to Retail Economics, discretionary income has gone down by 2.1%. According to the Centre for Policy Studies, if you're earning 50 grand, you're going to be 500 quid worse off by the end of this Parliament, despite a 6k increase in wages because of the budget and because of the tax burden and because of the government's out-of-control spending, Darren Jones. So people aren't feeling positive and the statistics don't seem to stand up what you're saying.
So I haven't seen the report you referred to, so I can't comment on its assumptions. But what I can tell you is what the government is doing. In the long run, when you've got to get the economy back on track and firing on all cylinders so that people's pay improves at work and the cost of their mortgage and rent and shopping and energy bills comes down over the long term, we're absolutely focused on that. But of course, at the budget, the Chancellor took a number of decisions to help immediately in the short term. The £150 cut to people's energy bills, which will come onto bills from April this year. The changes to breakfast clubs at school, funded childcare places at nursery for working families, the national living wage, over £900 a year for the lowest earners, the triple lock, giving pensioners, I think, over £600 extra this year, freezes on rail and bus fares and prescription charges, all of the things that government has a direct ability to affect, we have put in place measures to try to limit the cost of living. Ultimately, it will be about having stability in the economy and growth that can bring inflation down, and you'll know that inflation has been cut 6 times already under this Labour administration.
One could argue there was nowhere else for inflation to come but down. Just on schooling, you mentioned breakfast clubs there. We learned today that 105 private schools have closed as a result of Labour's VAT policy. That's affected 25,000 pupils. How on earth can it be a good policy for a government to have closed down more than 100 schools, making teachers redundant and moving pupils from the schools and classes and classmates that they enjoy and like?
So again, I'm not sure what evidence you're referring to, Camilla, so I can't comment on it.
It's the chief of the Independent Schools Council. All the stuff I'm referring to is in the Sunday papers.
Well, forgive me, I've not had a chance to read them because I've been doing TV this morning, but the government data that I've seen shows there's been minimal movement between... Well, you're a better person than I am, Camilla. I apologise for not being able to multitask sufficiently. But look, the government data shows that there's been very limited movement between private schools and public schools. And we
105 have closed down.
Should be charged on fee-paying schools. I don't recognise the data, is the point I'm making.
Well, that's from the head of the Independent Schools Council, who is presumably across the data.
Sure, but
if 105 private schools have closed down and Labour has been responsible for closing down schools and moving 25,000 pupils out of said schools, then that is not a policy to be proud of, is it, Darren Jones?
Look, there's a number of schools closed before the VAT change happened because they weren't profitable, because they were too small. I don't know what the circumstances were of those 105 schools, but it was a very clear manifesto commitment to add VAT to fee-paying schools, to redistribute that money into state schools, to support the majority of children in our country with additional money for teaching in the state system. That's what the public voted for, and that's what the government implemented. And I would just challenge you a little as well. At the start, you said that inflation couldn't go any further up. It was over 11% under Liz Truss and the Conservatives. It's now down to 3.2%, which is much, much lower than it was under the Conservatives. And so I think that, you know, the public recognise that their mortgage bills, their rent bills, they're starting to not rise as fast as they've done in the past because of the stability that Labour's brought back to the economy. And there's going to be more of that coming in the year ahead.
On the subject of inflation, it's nowhere is it higher than in Venezuela. I take it the Prime Minister is full-throated in his 100% support of President Trump and his actions against Maduro. I know he's held up as a hero to some on the left, including Jeremy Corbyn, but at the end of the day, the guy shouldn't have been in office, should be removed, and presumably you're 100% backing Trump on this, are you, Darren Jones?
So we've always agreed that President Maduro was an illegitimate president. The UK government sanctioned him. We sanctioned him as a Labour government only last year because of the actions that he took against the people of Venezuela. So I don't think anybody's going to be sad about President Maduro no longer being in office in Venezuela, that's for sure.
But you back Trump 100%, do you?
Well, the UK was not involved in any way with the.
Well, you must have a position on our closest ally
from the United States.
Do you back Trump 100% or not?
All I'm saying is that we were not. Well, it didn't matter one way or another because we weren't involved. This wasn't an operation that the UK armed forces were part of. Well,
yes.
because we
What does that say about the
it.
special relationship?
The UK. I think it's totally fine. This was a independent action of the United States of America. Congress itself wasn't informed, let alone allies or third countries, because it was a individual action of the United States administration. If the UK were involved operationally, then of course we would expect to be part of that conversation naturally, but we were not involved in any way.
Okay, but you must have an opinion.
We were not part of discussions on the operational detail.
I know, but finally, Darren Jones, you must have an opinion as to whether Donald Trump has acted in accordance with international law and correctly here. Do you back President Trump on this or not? Yes or no?
Well, that's a question to the US administration. It's for the
Well,
president
no, it's a
to set up the
question
legal
to
basis
you.
for the operation they undertook. I'm not.
And that's my question to you, Darren Jones. You're the Prime Minister's right-hand man.
Sure,
do
no, I
you
understand.
back do you back what Donald Trump has done? Yes or no?
Donald Trump is the President of the United States of America, Camilla. It's for him to set out the legal basis and his decisions for the operations he took. The UK was not
I'm asking if you
any
support
way.
it. It's such a
for us
straightforward question, Darren Jones. I'm asking you, as the Prime Minister's right-hand man, whether you support what Donald Trump has done to Maduro in Venezuela. Yes or no?
I'm giving you a straightforward answer, Camilla, and it doesn't
No,
matter
you're
one
not.
way or another, because this was an operation conducted by the United States. UK was not involved in any way. Questions about international law for the American administration to explain in terms of the legal basis of their operation, and for any challenge to that application to be conducted through international courts, not through the British government.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you one more time, Darren Jones, because I don't find that a credible answer. It's perfectly legitimate for me to ask you whether you support our main ally, the US, and US President Trump, with whom Keir Starmer apparently has a close personal relationship, let alone the special relationship. I'm merely asking you a simple question. We've all seen how this played out over the weekend. We can all form an opinion about it in this studio or beyond. What is your opinion? Does the Prime Minister, does the Labour government support President Trump in what he has done in Venezuela? Yes or no?
The Prime Minister's been very clear that we did not recognise the presidency of President Maduro. That's why the UK government sanctioned him and has long called for a peaceful transition to a democratically elected president in Venezuela. No? On the question of American operations, it's not a question for the UK as to whether America should undertake its operations or not. It's an independent, sovereign question of the American administration. It's not for the British government to provide a running commentary on the actions of other countries.
It's not a running commentary, it's just a yes or no question, but I don't think you're willing to answer it, so we may as well leave it there. But Darren Jones, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning.
Pleasure.
Right, thank you. We are going to get onto the paper review in just a moment once I consider those responses to those questions. And we've got lots more lined up today because we've got Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel. Maybe she can answer the question of whether we support the US in this or not. Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, and the former British Ambassador to Iran, Nicholas Hopton, to talk us through the recent events there too. Lots still to come on the show. Stay tuned. More fun to come.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. Temperatures above average across parts of Greece at the moment, but still some heavy showers and thunderstorms across parts of Spain. Also down towards the Canary Islands, Madeira, seeing some strong winds and showery rain too. Rain falling as snow over the mountains across parts of Spain, across into Italy as well. Further rain here around the coast. Temperatures around 12 or 13 Celsius. Something a little drier towards Greece there, and temperatures above average, and it remains so here for the next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Joining me now to review the Sunday front pages is Chief Political Correspondent at The Times, Aubrey Allegretti. Happy New Year to you, chap.
Happy New Year.
Thank you for coming in. Right, the papers, it's not just the broadsheets, by the way, it's also the tabloids, all full of the Maduro story. I think because obviously it's significant from a foreign affairs perspective, but also the operation, how the US did this, and then you get the picture of him in the Situation Room, and this extraordinary image of the former Venezuelan president there. What's going on with the earmuffs and the blindfold there, Aubrey?
Yeah, I mean, I presume that they're carrying him sort of to a secret location. They don't want him to basically be aware of what's going on around him, be able to recognise anyone's faces. And obviously overnight he's landed in New York, so he'll be facing prosecution there. I think there are probably still big questions about what the sort of new regime looks like, because America doesn't have troops on the ground here. How is it supposed to be able to enforce this new sort of transitional arrangement? And then, of course, Donald Trump's talking about American oil companies being deployed to fix the country. Now, is that a byword for America sort of, you know, creating lots of sort of financial interest in the country and trying to sort of effectively excavate it?
Because there's a big debate going on in the papers, isn't there? Is this about drugs or is it really about oil, and particularly China's use of Venezuelan oil in order to obviously outgun America when it comes to cheap production? So there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. John Bolton makes an interesting point in the Sunday Telegraph, doesn't he? You know, has Trump planned for day 2? He's planned for day 1, but what happens moving forward?
What comes next, exactly. And you sort of feel as though that is kind of the same response from the UK government side, because
we've had the response from Darren Jones. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure he was quite fully aware of what happened on day 1, let alone what was going to come next. I mean, it seems quite strange. UK government ministers are clearly stalling for time. Keir Starmer was suggesting yesterday that he wanted to speak to Donald Trump as quickly as possible. It's not clear whether that's happened yet. We've had no confirmation from Number 10 that it has.
But this inability for Number 10 to say whether they support this or not, I find incongruous at best. I mean, you either support the overthrow of an illegitimate dictator who, you know, has committed a series of horrendous acts against his own people to the extent that people were so poor there that they were eating cats, or you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your interview with Darren Jones was genuinely quite revealing in that he was saying it didn't matter one way or the other whether the UK was consulted. He was saying, well, it was an individual action by the US administration. Even Congress wasn't consulted. So he is sort of inferring that it's OK for the US to carry out military strikes and not inform the UK. It's allegedly its closest partner, certainly militarily. But after the state visit by Trump in the autumn last year and the questions about whether or not Keir Starmer cozied leading up to Donald Trump is really sort of bearing fruit, it looks a bit wet, really.
No, it does look a bit... That's a perfect way to describe it, a bit wet. Let's move on to domestic matters. So Starmer's in the Sunday Times, your sister paper, talking about how things can only get better, shades of Dee Ream and Tony Blair, 2026 isn't going to be as bad, we must have hope in our hearts and all the rest of it. However, I can't help but note that next to it is this extraordinary story. Left-leaning mothers of Mumsnet are deserting Labour for reform.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. I mean, the Labour reform dynamic is going to come really into play later in the year. We've got big elections in May, both local elections across England.
Fewer than we thought, but anyway.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, in the North East, there are going to be areas where Reform actually did very well in the general election and came second in a handful of seats, which are going up for grabs in the council election. So that's where they're looking to do well. And of course, Labour is on the back foot. It's still suffering in the opinion polls. And Keir Starmer has written a message in the Sunday Times trying to turn this around, which it feels is sort of aimed as much at voters as it is to Labour MPs.
It might be aimed at himself, actually.
Well, quite. I mean, maybe he's convincing himself. But he effectively is saying decades of decline aren't erased in months. And he's basically saying to people, look, it's not my fault that things aren't better and that, you know, we haven't reached the sunlit uplands just yet. He's trying to instil that feeling of hope.
But that was the Darren Jones line. This is all about Brexit and successive government failures and all the rest of it. And actually, we can have a debate about that high spending, high tax over the course of the last 25 years, not just the last 2 years. But equally, people are blaming Labour. I mean, the statistic in the Mumsnet thing is extraordinary, right? It says there, I think, that 41% of Mumsnet users supported Labour before Keir Starmer took power, and now it's down to 18. And they prefer Farage, which seems quite the leap, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Mums back Farage.
By historical standards, I mean, I think this survey's been going for several years, possibly as far back as a decade, and this is the first time that Labour hasn't recorded the sort of highest vote share. So it's certainly a big issue for Labour. And actually, we saw Nigel Farage really lean into trying to win over the sort of mums demographic at the tail end of last year.
Keep talking, Aubrey, because I've just got a lead falling out of my ear. Carry on.
Consummate professional, as usual. Yeah. Effectively, Nigel Farage pivoted later in the year from talking solely about immigration to trying to use that as a way to talk instead about crime. Yeah. And that was specifically designed to encourage particularly mothers who were sort of fearful about their children being the victims of crime, being, you know, those sorts of issues not being solved. Now, again, actually, Keir Starmer addresses this in his piece for the Sunday Times. He says that serious violence is down, with knife crime falling for the first time in 4 years. Sure. But ultimately, these mums on Mumsnet are backing reform over Labour now. It's 20% of users intending to vote reform at the next election.
Mindful that time is ticking away after my grilling of Darren Jones, there may be more reason to support reform over Starmer if he is trying to execute a Brexit plot. Now, I'm going to ask Lisa Smart of the Lib Dems about this because they have supported this idea of us rejoining the customs union. Dan Carden, who's an interesting Labour MP, is in a red wall seat. I know him quite well, good bloke, solid man. He's saying if we try and reverse Brexit, we are going to be absolutely trounced in the locals. And I think he has a point. And this is coming from Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham, both agitating for some kind of referendum reversal.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Carden's obviously been on quite a journey. I think he was International Development Secretary in the Shadow Cabinet under Jeremy Corbyn. Now he is the sort of voice of the blue Labour group. And he's obviously got a Liverpool seat. They are particularly concerned also about the threat of Reform UK. You would have thought it would be unthinkable for people in the biggest stronghold for Labour in the country, in Liverpool, would be that concerned. But genuinely, lots of Liverpool MPs are. So there are concerns raised by him and also Graham Stringer, an MP in Greater Manchester.
Yes, a prominent leaver. Good old Graham.
And they're effectively saying that it would be a betrayal if somebody who were trying to inherit the Labour Party leadership, i.e. Wes Streeting or Andy Burnham, tried to renege on the EU referendum implementation.
Aubrey, we have to leave it there. And I wanted to get your view on whether Callum Turner, he's going out with Dua Lipa, could be the next James Bond. Apparently that's been mooted in the Mail on Sunday, but we simply don't have time. Thank you, Aubrey. Have a good new year, and I hope everything goes well at the Times in 2026. Coming up next, we're going to be speaking to Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel and Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, who's got some exciting personal news. Don't go anywhere.
Hello from the Aurora Collection Resort here in Lapland. We're on an amazing Arctic adventure to celebrate our greatest cash giveaway, a simply stunning £85,000.
And in 2026, we're giving you the chance to win it all.
For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing the 9th of February 2026. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
So this is a lovely story because it's about a chap who bought this DB5 and he bought it for 900 quid. This is an Aston Martin DB5.
It's a lovely car.
Bought it for 900 quid. And then for 50 years, pretty much didn't do very much. He moved to the Middle East, car left was on his driveway, things happened, the local kids jumped on it and various other things, and it just decayed. He has spent pretty much the big wodge of 400 grand having it done.
Do we have a picture of this car now?
Oh, I thought as I was waffling. Well, I can hold it up. But this is how it looks now. There we go. This is how it looked then and now. I don't know which.
So he spent 400 grand on this.
400 grand. He sent it back to Aston Martin.
Oh.
To where it was made, and the reason it's worth now about $1 million is because there were only 37, I think,
39
of them made, and so it's very rare. There we go. Well done, him.
Pretty penny on that. Good for him.
Yeah. Yes, and good for him.
He hasn't made it yet.
No, he hasn't made it. It's just worth. I know. He may.
I
could.
was reading a story about a man who'd spent £1 million on a DB5, and it's now worth 500,000. But
right,
they hit a peak a couple of years ago. But who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
But don't you want to spend money on a car in order to use it, not to sell it?
Well,
I had a car like that. I drive it.
Of course. No, then that's what he's not selling it. He's worked hard. He said we've worked hard to get it
It is a work of art.
Reconditioned, and he loves it.
I wonder, does it have machine guns and things they're going to...
Oh no, weirdly it says no.
Or an ejector
no ejector seat, exactly. Or any of those other things. Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning and welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. Still lots more to come today. Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel will be here. I'll be getting her reaction to President Trump's announcement that he will run Venezuela after he launched large-scale strikes on the country yesterday. I'll also ask her about the ongoing situation in Iran. Deputy Leader of Reform UK Richard Tice will join me as Nigel Farage vows to go double or quits on his local election spending. What does Reform UK need to do to see May and the elections be successful for the party? The Liberal Democrats are launching a fresh bid to force the government into a vote on the UK's membership of the Customs Union. Would you believe it? Cabinet Office spokesperson for the party, Lisa Smart, will be here. I shall be grilling her about that. And former British Ambassador to Iran, Nicholas Hopton, will be here to discuss the Ayatollah's crackdown on protesters across the country. Is this the beginning of the end for the Ayatollah's regime? All that and much more, but first, here's your latest news headlines with Sophia Hill.
Camilla, thank you. Very good morning. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your latest headlines. Top story, ousted Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro has arrived in New York to face criminal charges, as President Trump says that the US will run Venezuela after special forces captured the nation's leader and his wife in a helicopter raid.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition.
The US president confirms that Maduro and his wife were removed from Caracas and indicted on alleged narco-terrorism offences following major strikes in the Venezuelan capital. Downing Street says that the UK backs a transition of power in the oil-rich nation, with Sir Keir Starmer insisting that Britain will shed no tears over the collapse of Maduro's regime and will discuss next steps with Washington.
I want to speak to President Trump. I want to speak to allies. As I say, I can be absolutely clear that we were not involved in that. And as you know, I always say and believe we should all uphold international law.
Swiss police have identified 16 more victims of the devastating New Year's Eve bar fire that killed 40 people in the alpine resort of Crans, Montana, in one of the deadliest disasters in recent Swiss history. Authorities say that those identified include nationals from Switzerland, Italy, France, Romania, Turkey and the United Arab Emirates, highlighting the international scale of this tragedy. That brings the total to 24 confirmed identities of those who died in the blaze, as investigations continue into how the fire tore through the popular mountain venue. Back in the UK, Sir Keir Starmer is preparing a fresh New Year pitch to voters with the cost of living front and centre. The Prime Minister will highlight measures such as freezing rail fares and fuel duty, insisting that families should begin to feel positive change in 2026. It comes as Labour faces sluggish growth, poor poll ratings and mounting pressure ahead of May's local elections, with ministers told that there can be no let-up. Earlier, GB News spoke to Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Darren Jones, about the public's faith in the government.
It's understandable that the public are angry about that, and they're not sure whether governments are able actually to deliver a better country that improves their living standards. We say that that is not true, that mainstream politics can make a difference to people's lives, and we're absolutely focused on delivering it. And 2026 is going to be a year where people start to feel the benefit of some of the decisions that we started to take in our first 18 months in government. And wintry weather continues to grip parts of the UK, with yellow warnings for snow and ice still in place and further travel disruption expected into Monday. The north of Scotland remains particularly affected, with train cancellations, road closures and police advising against all but essential travel as snow drifts build and temperatures stay below freezing. Warnings also cover Wales, Greater Manchester, the South West and much of England's east coast, with the Met Office cautioning that heavy snow could cut off rural communities and lead to power outages. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back in an hour, but now it's back to Camilla.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you, Sophia. Joining me now is Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel. Dame Priti, lovely to see you this morning. Happy New Year to you. Perhaps you can answer a question that Darren Jones was strangely unable to. Do the Conservatives back what US President Donald Trump has done in Venezuela?
I've been very clear already that we are not shedding any tears whatsoever now that Maduro has gone. He was an oppressive tyrant, a terrible, terrible dictator that has done dreadful things to his people and country. And Camilla, I think the context of how America has got to this position is also important. And I don't even think our government has recognised that. You know, in terms of the drug trafficking, their own national security policy, America has been really, you know, paving this course of action for some time, basically. Now, whether or not we agree or disagree with it, you're speaking to someone that when I was in government actually worked with America on stopping cocaine and illegal drugs from Latin America coming to our country. So, you know, there'll be a lot of detail here, which I still don't think we fully know and understand. Lots of people are going on about the legals, but there'll be more information, I think, that will have to come out. What I think is a little bit alarming, to be really candid, is that the British government doesn't seem to know much about what has happened, and they clearly haven't put the calls in yet. So we'll be asking these questions of the government when Parliament returns tomorrow. And, you know, I think this is a big moment, actually, for the UK-US relationship. It's apparently a special relationship. But again, you know, we've not exactly been informed on much of the detail thus far.
OK, so I appreciate what you're saying about an absence of detail, and of course conversations need to take place. But on the basis of what we do know, and let's be honest, the Sunday papers are full of detail about Maduro's past, why this has happened, all of the economic problems that the Venezuelan people have been facing in recent years. We also know how the operation was executed. Yes, concerns have been raised about a potential breach of international law. But just to put exactly the same question to you that I put to Darren Jones that he couldn't answer, do you support what the US president has done, yes or no?
Well, we support the fact that Maduro has now gone. His regime was awful,
but the
so
way
we support
Trump
that.
has done it.
Well, you know, that's to be quite frank, as I've said already, I think that was on the cards from the action that America has been undertaking in recent months. So, you know, we are pleased that he is no longer there. We are not losing any tears or sleep over this at all. What I think is important, Camilla, is what next? This is the question. We've just seen an audacious military operation which was executed with great precision, and America, clearly, they're very proud of that. But it's about what comes next, and that's the political questioning that is required about whether or not Venezuela will now move on that pathway of democracy, freedom, and also good governance. It's a deeply corrosive country with corruption at every single level there. And even a VP who's just been sworn in to become president, there are sanctions against her in Europe and with the American administration. So this is not going to be a walk in the park. And I think we all have to go in with our eyes wide open about the next steps and what this means. And also there are British nationals that live in Venezuela too. So we want to ensure that obviously the people of Venezuela, they get their, not just say their freedoms, but they are put on the path to good governance and freedom in the right way.
We'll move on to domestic matters in just a moment, but do you think that the Prime Minister's reaction to events in Iran has been proportionate, in the sense that I pointed out to Darren Jones that post welcoming Alaa Abdel Fattah back into the country remains on his X feed, and yet he has posted nothing at all about Iranian protesters trying to overthrow the Ayatollah?
I did see that, Camilla, and I agree with you. I completely agree with you on that. I've written an article today making that exact point. When we see the protesters in Iran, they're dying for their freedom. And that might be a difficult concept for us to comprehend. They are fighting and dying for their freedom. Look at the tyrannical regime with the Ayatollahs in Tehran. And it is extraordinary with the level of protests that we've seen. We haven't seen protests of this nature, I think, since 2022, when we saw the most appalling brutality against women in particular for not fully covering their hair. So I think this is a really big moment, actually. It could be a crossroads. It could be a turning point. There are all sorts of issues going on in Iran, people protesting for different reasons. The big reasons right now are obviously the currency, the collapse of the economy. They've had a water crisis, but it's a terrorist regime. They sponsor proxies, terrorist proxies around the world. They're a country that hurts us. They're a threat to our national security. So how can we have a Prime Minister and a Labour government that sits in silence and sits on their hand at this particular moment? I just don't think that's acceptable.
I mentioned Mr. El Fattah there. Now, he was granted citizenship, I believe, on your watch as Home Secretary. Bearing in mind what we now know he has said about Zionists, about Jews, about our own police force, about white people, do you regret that decision?
Well, of course, absolutely. And my party's been clear that he should be stripped of his citizenship. It's important to understand the past concept. These cases did not come to me directly. There was a ruling, an ECHR ruling, I think it was actually before I became Home Secretary in 2019, that made citizenship cases of his particular nature and similar cases where citizenship was granted through the mother. It did not go through. They would not need to go through what is the good life or good character test. That has to change. I think it speaks to the big fundamental changes my party is putting forward now, such as leaving the ECHR, which means that cases like this would not occur again, where citizenship would not be granted in this particular way. So what he has said is absolutely appalling, and that is why we're calling for his citizenship to be revoked.
So you're saying that the way he was granted citizenship didn't take into account character and therefore didn't include these extremely concerning posts? Because I think from the GB News audience's point of view, they cannot fathom how a man who is very easily revealed to have been an anti-Semite and a self-confessed racist, journalists found these tweets within minutes, how he could have still been let into the country and indeed granted citizenship and then welcomed back by successive governments if this record was so easily available. What were the intelligence services doing?
Camilla, that is That is a fair point. I completely understand that. And there is no defence for that whatsoever. The fact of the matter is this was down to an ECHR ruling back in 2019. That's my understanding of the case and the technicalities behind it. That is clearly unacceptable. I do think it speaks to the fundamental issues, not just about how our system of governance doesn't fully work in the interests of, even ministers of the day making decisions about our country. But the really important point is this is why we do need to continue to press the case to leave the ECHR, which my party is doing. And do not forget, we've done the policy work, the legal basis already as to how we would lead the ECHR to make sure situations like this do not occur again.
OK, and moving on to domestic matters and indeed party matters, Kevin Hollingworth, who is the party chairman of the Tories, has suggested a reform coalition might be necessary if the Libs, Labour and the Greens form together to form a progressive alliance. In order to beat such an alliance, the right will have to unite. You must agree with that, not least in light of more in common MRP polling that puts Reform UK on course for a majority. The Tories are going to be squeezed out of the agenda here, aren't they, unless they form some sort of an alliance with Nigel Farage?
First of all, you're very welcome to come out campaigning with us anytime, because we're always out on, hustings on the trail, because as Conservatives, we fight for every vote. You know that. We're dedicated. I've campaigned quite a bit for my party now, and I maintain that obviously we will continue to campaign for Conservative values, beliefs, our policies, Scotland and Wales, London and all the elections that we all face, rightly so, this year, and other local elections. We look forward to that. As Conservatives, we campaign on our prospectus and our manifesto, and we will continue to do that.
Although Dominic Cummings, previously of your parish, used to work for Boris Johnson, was his right-hand man, has said that the Tories are, quote, completely dead and like a local vagrant. He said, it's like the local vagrant who used to smash everything up, but now he's cabbaged and sitting in a wheelchair and isn't relevant anymore. That's what he said about the Conservatives. What do you think?
Not my party, quite frankly. I see party activists who are working hard day in, day out. I see Conservative councillors working hard across our country, representing our party and delivering public services for the people that elect them and their constituents and for their local areas. So that is not right. And quite frankly, that is not a fair description, full stop, of anybody or any public servant that is dedicated to doing the heavy lifting across our communities, which we are.
All right, final question. What is Shadow Attorney General Lord Wolfson thinking in representing Roman Abramovich, not least in light of all of the Tories' criticism of Abramovich for apparently being an enabler of Putin? You were very outspoken about this in 2022. You talked about people who enabled Putin being closed down, being shut down and subject to sanctions. And then a Conservative is representing the former Chelsea boss.
My understanding is that he's not representing the former Chelsea boss, Camilla. So he's working on a set of legal proceedings, which are ongoing legal proceedings in Jersey, but he's not been instructed on the Chelsea football case matter. That is my understanding. I don't know any other details on this, but that is effectively the position that I have been informed of. And the reality is, look, anybody that is enabling Russia's illegal war and invasion of Ukraine should clearly, as we have said consistently since, the war was declared, Russia's illegal invasion, sanctions and the full force of law should be applied. So, that is our position. That is exactly where we've been consistent. But as I said, in answer to your questions, my understanding is that he's not representing Lord Wolfson directly on this. I'm sorry.
Okay, cool. Yes, Lord Wolfson isn't representing, Roman Abramovich. Thank you. Thank you, Dame Priti Patel. We'll leave it there, but thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Friends of GB News can vote in our poll this morning, and we're asking, should Sir Keir Starmer condemn President Trump's capture of President Maduro? You can vote by scanning the QR code on the screen now or visiting gbnews.com. I'm going to bring you the result very soon. Coming up next, the Deputy Leader of Reform UK and the MP for Boston and Skegness, Richard Tice, will join me. He's had a very eventful Christmas, and he'll fill us in on it all in just a moment. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Joining me now is the Deputy Leader of Reform UK and MP for Boston and Skegness, Richard Tice. Before we get into Happy New Year. Before we get into serious political matters, congratulations are in order.
Thank you very much. Yes.
What happened on Boxing Day?
On Boxing Day, in the pub, with my hand gripping the mulled wine, I asked Isabel Oakeshott to marry me, and she accepted. Great news.
Wonderful.
So, yes, we are engaged and we'll be married this year.
The producers wanted to see a ring. They wanted to see a picture of a ring. Can we see a picture of a ring, Richard?
No, not yet. That will happen in due course. You'll have to invite me back in due course.
You know we have some people who are specialists in gold who advertise on the station. I know you've seen those adverts,
yes,
so
absolutely,
if you need any help...
I'll be investing in some gold.
Huge congrats.
Thank
Did you go down on bended knee?
No, I was rooted to the bar stool.
Oh, were you?
Yes, on the second glass of mulled wine. There
well,
we are.
Congratulations, and I'm to you both, because I know Isabel well as well, so that's wonderful news. Right, let's get into the serious issue of the day, which is Trump's assault on Venezuela and Maduro. Did you catch the Darren Jones interview earlier?
Yes, I did. I mean, it's just extraordinary. He just won't answer a basic question.
I mean, is it a difficult question for the government? Do they support Trump or not?
Well, when it suits, but obviously they've got their own left-wingers to appease, and the communists don't, in their own party, and the hard socialists don't like it. Look, this is good news for the West. Who it's uncomfortable for is the socialists and the communists and people like Putin and the Chinese communist regime, because they've been supporting Maduro, who's a huge supporter of Putin, and quite rightly, America has said, actually, he's a threat to our US interests, and that's why they've done it. They're entitled to do it under US domestic law.
Richard, it's about oil. It's about links to China.
It's all about the US national security interest, and that actually is also in our interest. For example, hopefully it'll disrupt the vast amount of cocaine that comes out of Venezuela, comes to the UK and Europe. I'm not saying it's going to solve it, but this was not a legitimate president. This was an illegitimate, brutal drugs lord.
Is it a legitimate way to remove him? I mean, has
it was a very successful way to remove him.
Of course it was successful, but there are going to be concerns. As Priti Patel said, there are legal questions here.
Yeah, there's legal questions. Within US domestic law, it's clearly legal. The Commander-in-Chief can do that. Within the UN international law, Article 51, you can legally apply self-defence. There's a question as to whether or not other states were unwilling or unable to do the necessary. Look, lawyers can argue it. The reality is that the people who will be anxious and uncomfortable about this are the communists in China and Putin in Russia.
It's interesting, isn't it, that the Prime Minister didn't seem to have any advance warning. Do you know if Nigel Farage has had any conversations?
You wouldn't expect them to. I mean,
No.
Congress didn't get advance warning. If you want to keep something secret, you've actually basically not got to tell people.
OK. Let's move on to El Fattah. I just asked Priti Patel about why he was granted citizenship on her watch. She's made the point that at the time that he was granted citizenship, they couldn't take into account of his character, and therefore that vetting process that should have taken place didn't. Although,
and what she didn't tell you was that it was one of her own colleagues, Caroline Noakes, as immigration minister in 2019, who changed the law. And because the Tories have been so supine and feeble on the ECHR, they decided to remove good character. And this is on the Tories' watch. This is the Tories' fault. And then you've got a Prime Minister now who is welcoming as a top priority for the United Kingdom to welcome an extreme, racist, anti-Semite thug into this country.
Well, apparently
it's
he's
utterly
still
appalling.
welcome, according to Darren Jones.
Well, let's see what happens in Parliament this week. Because
Well,
I think there's going to be a lot of discussion.
But then
over the next couple of days.
you've said he should be stripped of his citizenship and deported.
Yes.
I mean, they're fine words, but how would that actually work in practice? Egypt isn't going to take this bloke back.
They haven't got a choice. He's a citizen. He's a citizen of Egypt, and we have relationships
under the
with
current circumstances, while we remain in the ECHR and all the rest of it, this is typical reform, isn't it? Sort of making a lot of noise. Yeah, deport him, strip him of his. How?
Very simple. You've got to arrest him, remove his citizenship, and remove him back to Egypt.
And you don't think there's going to be a queue of lefty lawyers trying to keep him in the country?
Frankly,
and massive amounts of lawfare.
We will deal with that.
Well, you won't deal with it. You're not in power.
Well,
I mean, I'm saying you make
why
these claims. You make these claims while you're in pseudo-opposition. In reality, it won't work.
Wrong. We've clearly said we're going to leave the ECHR, which the Tories blather about, but they won't do.
Yes.
And we've clearly said that we will detain and deport people who are against our national interest, of which he is clearly one.
I know.
So, yes, we would detain and we would deport.
Reform. Yeah, OK, but you've said he should be stripped of his citizenship and deported now.
And
That's not practical, is it? Because it's not going to happen.
No, I disagree. I believe that it is, with strong, clear leadership. I think it can be done, it should be done, and it must be done.
OK, so we've got this MRP poll. Well, have I got the paperwork in front of me? Yes, I think I have. No, I haven't. That's the paper review. Here we are. Suggesting that you are going to win a 55-seat majority. It gives you 381 seats on the basis of a 31% vote share. Isn't the problem that Reform is going to have, should this play out, that
That's not a problem. It means we've got a majority in order to save the country and make people better off again and control our borders. That's not a problem. That's a good thing.
You're going to need a stonking majority for some of the legislative reform that you're proposing, right?
Yes.
But isn't this landslide, if you get it, at 31%, just as loveless as Labour's? Isn't this problematic, bearing in mind that Corbyn of all people, got a 40% vote share in 2017? 31%.
Well, that's why we're going to keep battling. That's why we're going to campaign hard for these mayor elections, where we're hoping to do very well up and down the country, where we're still allowed to have elections because the Tories and Labour are trying to cancel them all over the place. But we'll be focusing very hard on that. And if we achieve that, that'll give extra strength and momentum. And we're saying to people, if you want real reform, if you want to save the country, then you actually got to vote reform.
But isn't the electoral maths actually showing that you're going backwards? So we had a situation where... Hang on, let me just give you the stats. Find out now, summer puts you at 35%. Now you're at 30%. We had an average of you being around 30 in the summer. You're now down to 28. So unfortunately, you've peaked too soon, Richard Tice.
No, we're just having a gentle pause for breath.
Oh, sorry.
We're giving the others a little bit. We're giving the others a little bit of a chance. We don't want to, we don't want to destroy them too early.
No.
They'll still feel able to sort of be in the game, but the reality is we're going to keep moving forwards.
Yeah, your average has fallen from 32% in October to 28%
The higher you
now.
go, the harder it gets to go ever higher, and you can't go up in a straight
you're
line.
Not going higher, you're going lower.
We're pausing for breath, and then we're going to keep moving
No, you're
forwards.
declining.
We're pausing for breath.
Say if you were a swimmer, you were doing really well, you were front crawling.
I'm in the down point of the breaststroke.
Now you're under the water, you haven't got your goggles on.
That's literally how fast swimmers, that's how you do it. With your goggles on, you go underwater, you accelerate forwards, and then you come up again.
Please, hang on a minute, to be serious for a moment, you can't be pleased that your average has fallen now by 4%. Yes, you have got the Greens and others nipping at your heels.
We haven't got the Greens nipping at our heels. We're at about 28, 30, 31. The Greens are down at 15, 16, with a guy who thinks he can enlarge parts of the women's body by just looking at it. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Look, I'm very pleased that we're leading all of these polls by over 10%.
I tell you where you're not leading, on the economy. So Nigel Farage has now suggested scrapping the OBR, which people might have some sympathy for, but they may ask themselves, well, how do we then trust you on the economy?
Well,
Unfortunately,
who runs the country?
You're not
is it the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, or is it the OBR? It should be elected ministers.
I tell you who isn't trusted in the economy, and that's Reform. 41% of Britons trust them at least a fair amount on immigration, according to YouGov from the autumn, but on the economy, only 25 to 29% trust them. In fact, the Tories, of all people, are trusted more on the economy than Reform. That's a massive problem, isn't it?
Look, we've always got work to do. We're always looking forwards, always going to keep pushing on. We're not complacent on anything, but here's the point. We are trusted to save this country, and that's why we're leading That's why we're leading in 180, Camilla, 180 national polls, and the average. I think is about 10%.
What is Reform's economic policy? Because I think the GB News audience is confused. You know, you claim to be Thatcherite, then you're talking about renationalising industries, then you're talking about welfare increases.
It's very simple. We'll make people better off by cutting wasteful spending, cutting daft regulation.
But not tax anymore.
Well, hang on. You do those two things so that you can prove to the bond market, who, because of the Tories' mismanagement of the economy, raising debt, because of Labour's mismanagement of the economy, raising debt, the bond markets basically are in charge. So we've got to satisfy them, cut wasteful spending, cut daft regulations. That motivates entrepreneurs. Then we can afford performance-related tax cuts.
But isn't the tearing up of your contract with the people, which you presented to the public last year, before the last general election...
Well, it's a year and a half ago now, but let's remember, we didn't win that election,
It's now been torn up.
We didn't win that committee.
It's been torn up.
That was relevant at the time. The people said thanks, but no thanks.
Isn't that emblematic of Reform? It's
no,
all talk and no trousers. You put these promises in a people's contract, and then Nigel Farage goes, oh, no, I don't think we've got the money for this. And then you have to say, sorry, we changed our mind.
You do realise that there's no GDP growth. You do realise...
I do realise that.
Since the election, the government has borrowed over £200 billion. In fact, I think £250 billion. So the finances are in a dire state, and only Reform will cut wasteful spending, cut daft regulations, so that we can get the economy moving again, get people feeling better off in their pockets, and that's when you can afford tax cuts.
I've been told to wrap up. When's this wedding happening?
Later this year, hopefully in the summer.
Will I be invited, do you think?
Oh, very good question. Depends how nice you are to me.
Well, I think
but you are wearing a Reform dress.
I'm trying to be frozen today to reflect the weather, Richard Tice. Well, congratulations to you and Isabel again, and thank you very much for joining me. Coming up next, we're going to be speaking to Nicholas Hopton, who used to be the ambassador to Iran, to find out what's been going on there in recent days and weeks, and indeed speaking to the Liberal Democrats. Why are they trying to reverse the referendum again, all these years on? Stay tuned.
Good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. The cold theme continues through the next few days, and for some of us we will see further wintry showers, some particularly heavy and frequent snow showers across northern Scotland, and here it will once again be windy, so we're going to see drifting snow, temporary blizzard conditions across the higher ground as well. There are a number of weather warnings out across other parts of the UK too, both for snow and for ice. The wintry showers, though, through today will tend to focus themselves a bit more across more western parts of the UK as well as northern Scotland compared to yesterday. So a drier day to come for North East England and East Anglia, and for many regions here, plenty of winter sunshine, but feeling bitterly cold, and the frost barely lifting through the course of today, potentially staying below freezing in some spots. But let's focus in on those snow showers across northern Scotland. We've already got a deep cover of snow on the ground in many areas here, and roads will continue to get covered by snow as these snow showers push through. And even across more southern parts of Scotland, there might well be the odd snow flurry now and again. Across Northern Ireland, a focus for showers through the course of this afternoon and into this evening. More snow showers pushing into Wales and the southwest. A covering of snow here potentially through the course of this evening and overnight. And perhaps even a few snow flurries through the early hours of Monday morning across more central southern parts of England. So you might wake up to a dusting of snow here on Monday morning. Otherwise, skies tend to turn much clearer as we go through the night across many inland areas. So another widespread and severe frost forming in some spots. And there may well be some patchy ice, even where you haven't seen too many showers. Temperatures in rural spots could get as low as minus 10 degrees tonight and even minus 4 or minus 5 in some towns and cities. Do check our website for further updates on the warnings through Monday. There are several in place, but once again, it will be northern Scotland that sees the lion's share of the snow showers on Monday. Some also moving down across the west and maybe clipping North Sea coastal regions too, but another bright and sunny day to come for many inland areas, although still rather cold. Temperatures struggling to get much above 2 to 4 degrees.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Joining me now is the Cabinet Office spokesperson for the Liberal Democrats, Lisa Smart. Miss Smart, lovely to see you this morning. Happy New Year to you. I think it's your debut on my show, so welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, and a Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you so much. Now, the Liberal Democrats appear to be on a quest to rejoin the customs union. Tell me, Miss Smart, in what way is this either Liberal or democratic?
So what we're calling for is, in the upcoming legislation that the government's bringing forward about the EU reset bill, which we're expecting in the next few weeks, we're calling for the UK to be on a path to join a customs union, negotiate a customs union with the EU. This is the biggest lever that the Prime Minister could pull to generate growth in the UK. It would reduce all that red tape that leaving the EU brought about, leaving the single market, leaving the customs union brought about, made it harder for UK businesses to trade with our European neighbours. It would generate growth in a way that no other measure would take. And so we're calling on particularly backbench Labour MPs to support our efforts as the legislation goes through Parliament. We're calling on them to support us because we hope we can convince the government that this is the right thing to do.
But we get on to the growth claim in just a minute. This is completely anti-democratic. We had the largest mandate in history for Brexit back in 2016. Why on earth are you trying to reverse it? The majority voted to leave the customs union and leave the single market. So this is just a brazen attempt to rejoin the EU, at least a part of it. In what way does this honour the referendum result? It betrays it, doesn't it?
This is a really pragmatic step to rebuild our relationship with the European Union. There are countries out there, I'm thinking about Turkey as a really good example, who have a customs union with the European Union. They're not members of the EU, but they've taken a really pragmatic, sensible decision that getting rid of red tape for businesses, making trade easier, boosts growth and makes it much, much easier for the country to grow so that we can afford all those public services that all the GB News viewers value dearly.
Well, hang on a minute. We would no longer be able to set our own tariffs. We wouldn't be able to negotiate our own deals. We'd be subject to deals negotiated by others that may harm us rather than benefit us. We're going to have to reject all of the trade deals we've already signed. We'll be a rule taker, not a rule maker. In what world can this benefit Britain?
So we're talking about negotiating a bespoke customs union with the European Union. We're not talking about joining an existing one. The deals that the UK government has negotiated, let's talk about India as an example, they would need to be renegotiated. But that deal added 0.13% to GDP. That's such a small amount that the OBR didn't feel it needed to redo any of its calculations. It would pale into insignificance if we were to negotiate a
you've cited one deal.
Union.
We've got deals with the US, New Zealand, Japan, Australia, South Korea, Singapore. We've actually got a trade deal with the EU. You're talking about it not adding anything to growth, but let's have a look at the post-Brexit growth statistics. If the Labour government are to be believed, we've got the fastest growth in the G7 despite Brexit. I mean, Brexit can't be responsible for higher growth when you look at Germany's growth rate since 2020. 2.1%.
Brexit isn't
why don't you ever
responsible for
acknowledge
higher
these
growth.
figures?
Brexit isn't responsible for higher growth. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor are struggling to find the growth that they have said is their key mission of this
We've
government.
got better growth than Germany. So what I'm saying, sorry, just to make my point really clear, Ms. Smart, the Liberal Democrats are constantly blaming Brexit for our sclerotic growth rate. But my point is, if Germany's growth is even less, then it can't have much to do with Brexit, can it?
Recent stats from the House of Commons Library show that there's a £90 billion black hole in our country's finances because of Brexit. It just makes sense.
Hang on a minute.
That if you put barriers into trade, it makes trade harder.
No, hang on a minute. You initially talked about GDP growth. You made claims about GDP growth and Brexit's negative effect on it. I'd like you to answer this question. Our GDP growth in real terms is 7.5% since 2020. Germany's is 2.1%. So how on earth can you suggest that Brexit has an effect on our growth rate when we've grown at a higher rate than Germany that's still in the EU? How can you blame Brexit for a growth rate when we've got the highest level of growth, even though it's lower than everyone wants, in the G7?
All members of the European Union will have different growth rates and they have different economies affected by different factors, some global, some local. What I'm saying to you is that our growth would be stronger if we were in a customs union with the European Union, making
Germany's
trade easier.
Isn't. Germany is in a customs union with the EU and its growth rate is a very, very low compared to the UK's, which is low enough. 2.1%. So being in a customs union with the EU is no guarantee of high growth, is it?
So what I'm saying is that it would make trade easier. Good trade makes growth easier, which makes it much easier for the businesses in my constituency to pay their
We've got a trade deal with the EU.
I'm talking about a customs union which would get rid of so much paperwork that the business owners in my constituency tell me time after time how it's just so much harder to deal taking goods from the UK over into the EU. This would get rid of the amount of paperwork that I think it's 20 trips to the moon, the number of bits of paperwork that have been added to UK businesses since we left the EU.
You could simplify the bureaucracy without having to rejoin the customs union. But do you understand my point about it being a Brexit betrayal? The clue is in the name of your party. I'm reading it here. Liberal Democrats. Liberals and Democrats have to support a democratic vote. A large mandate, largest mandate in history, once in a lifetime, according to Vince Cable.
So there have been several elections since then. I stood on a manifesto in the 2024 election that had very clearly our approach to a customs union in there. I am fulfilling the mandate that the voters of Hazel Grove constituency gave me in pushing this government to take a more sensible, more pragmatic approach and look at those countries who are not members of the European Union but do have a customs union. I mentioned Turkey. There is no, as far as I'm aware, clear plan for Turkey to join the EU. But what they have taken is a really pragmatic step to make it easier to trade with the European Union. It's our biggest trading partner, and all of the other deals that the government has struck since we've left the EU pale into insignificance in terms of the scope and the scale.
Very, very quickly, because I know you're tight on time, the quest for liberal democracy in Iran should be recognised by Western leaders, shouldn't it? And yet nothing at all from Ed Davey on this. No post. He posted 4 times about Robbie Gibb. and his involvement in the BBC scandal, he hasn't once posted about Iranian women being persecuted and tortured simply for removing hijabs. That's not liberal or democratic either, is it?
Well, look, the situation in Iran is absolutely devastating. The people
why
there
hasn't he tweeted about it?
I don't manage the leader's social media account. I know.
Don't you think he should?
I think that actually Ed is so strong on matters of women's rights, on matters of the fundamental
not on
right
Iranian
to protest.
women's rights, he isn't?
I haven't spoken to him about this, but I am absolutely sure that he would be full-scale behind the rights of women in Iran to live the life that they deserve, the right to protest.
He tweets repeatedly about Elon Musk, doesn't he, and Trump, yet nothing on Iranian women. Lisa Smart, just to conclude.
Trump, on this issue, talking about being locked and loaded, is hugely dangerous. And I worry less about what Ed Davey's tweeting, more about what Donald Trump is tweeting and how he is hugely dangerous for the security of our country and the whole of the globe. At least he's supported Iranian women. I mean, he's gone further, hasn't he, old misogynistic Donald Trump, in his support of Iranian women than good old cuddly Ed Davey. I think more people are interested in what people are delivering than what they're tweeting, but we may have to disagree on that, Camilla.
All right. Lisa Smart, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Lovely to see you. Thank you. Coming up next, we're going to be discussing Iran further because we're going to be speaking to the former ambassador, Nicholas Hopton, who is going to take us through the recent events, what it all means for the region. Could this be the end of the Ayatollah? All that's still to come. Don't go anywhere.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. Temperatures above average across parts of Greece at the moment, but still some heavy showers and thunderstorms across parts of Spain. Also down towards the Canary Islands, Madeira, seeing some strong winds and showery rain too. Rain falling as snow over the mountains across parts of Spain, across into Italy as well. Further rain here around the coast. Temperatures around 12 or 13 Celsius. Something a little drier towards Greece there, and temperatures above average, and it remains so here for the next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, here at Holbrook Animal Rescue, they're being forced to relocate, and if they can't find a suitable alternative, they'll even be at risk of closing. And I've seen the amazing work that they've done here. Just earlier we met a dog called Essie who has just found her almost possible forever home literally in the time that we were here. She only came here a couple of days ago, so it's really great work that they do for all animals. Like this one here, this is Torn, he's just a puppy, and I'm also joined by Laura Santini, who runs the shelter. Tell us a bit about Torn here.
So this is just a little fellow that came in, no fault of his own. The people just couldn't cope with him. So he's lively, and he's a half shepherd, half Labrador.
What kind of impact would the possible relocation or even closure have on dogs like this one and all the other animals you have here?
Well, simply that we wouldn't be able to take them. So if the next one comes up like this and we've got nowhere to go, then we just can't take them, obviously. So what happens to them at that point, I don't know, because we don't just take beautiful pups like this. We take the old and the sick and the dogs that other people don't necessarily want to take. So I can't imagine what would happen to some of them. So I don't know. It's sad. It's just a sad situation.
And you've had quite a lot of support from the community here in trying to relocate. What's been there for you in terms of support?
They're absolutely incredible. They've sent 1,000 letters into the council to try and support us and help us and let everyone see the light that, you know, you do actually need animal sanctuaries around. You can't shut them all down. We're always getting phone calls saying how much people like what we do and hope we get our plan in appeal when it goes through and things like that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. Former British Ambassador to Iran, Nicholas Hopton, joins me now. Nicholas, if I may, thank you very much for your time on this Sunday morning. Just for those who aren't really well acquainted with the region, can you just take our viewers and our listeners through what has been happening in Iran in recent days?
Good morning, Camilla. Since 28th of December, there's been an escalation in protests across the country, which have led to deaths. At latest count, over 14 protesters have been killed. They started out essentially as a reaction to economic hardship, mismanagement of the economy by the Islamic regime. But it's not really about the economy. These protests, which are escalating, are about something much more profound. Many different groups across the country essentially saying they've had enough of the Islamic regime and they want something different.
There are echoes, of course, of the Arab Spring, a lot of coverage on social media, less on mainstream channels, and we can get onto the BBC's lack of coverage of this in just a moment. But does this look as if it's something different to previous protests? Because we've had this sentiment bubbling up in recent years, haven't we?
This is not the first time we've seen protests in Iran by any means. The Iranians are enthusiastic protesters, always have been, including before the 1979 revolution. Most recently, we saw very big protests back in 2022 over the death of Mahsa Amini, a young girl who was killed for wearing her hijab incorrectly, apparently. That brought a lot of people onto the streets, the biggest protest we've seen for a very long time. And before that, there were protests at the end of 2017 over fuel subsidies. You go back to 2009, the Green Revolution, when over months, protesters came out on the streets and protested about the election of Ahmadinejad, you may recall, whose election in 2009 was largely seen as being fraudulent. So protests are nothing new. What's interesting about these protests is the scale of them, how they're spreading. They're taking place in 2/3 at the moment of Iran's 31 provinces, and a wide range of different groups from society, led by Generation Z. The young people of Iran are incredibly courageous, and some of the pictures that have emerged in recent days of young people standing unarmed in front of the security forces, protesting, resisting, showing that they aren't just going to roll over. Incredibly brave young people. That is the mood on the street in Iran at the moment, and I think it will grow. I think the repression of it will grow. The crackdown is already ramping up, despite some of the rhetoric from the President Pezeshkian, who's trying to be more conciliatory. So I think this is unfortunately going to become more bloody. Whether it leads to any fundamental change in the country is a different question.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you next, because if there is to be regime change, then there needs to be support from the Western world. The US President Donald Trump has been quite vocal in its support of the protesters, saying that the US military will stand ready to help should they want to overthrow the Ayatollah. He's been rather distracted in recent days by the situation in Venezuela. Can the Iranians overthrow the Ayatollah and his regime without Western intervention?
I think this is a matter for the Iranians, and while the West, while the Americans, the British, the Europeans should be very focused on this, should be calling for the respect of human rights, for protests to be allowed, which are allowed under Iranian constitutional law, and we should remain putting that pressure on the regime to respect the rights of protesters. It is not for us to intervene directly in a military way. And in the past, history shows us that when we have got involved in Iran, and we have done on many occasions over the last 200 years, both the UK and the US, it hasn't tended to go well.
Nicholas, I was interested by what you said there about Gen Z or Z leading this. I wrote a story a couple of years ago about the women of Iran, particularly young women, as you say, in light of the murder of that young woman for not wearing her hijab correctly, rising up. In comparison to when you were ambassador in Iran, what's been the effect, for instance, of social media? Has that galvanised younger people to be more courageous than their fathers, mothers, grandparents could have been back in the day? Is there been a strength in numbers kind of community online that has helped to push these protests forward, particularly among young people?
Yes, I think what we saw with the Arab Spring that you mentioned earlier, Camilla, is suddenly social media playing a very important part in popular resistance to oppressive autocratic regimes. And you'll remember the situation in Egypt where social media not only galvanized but coordinated the protests there in 2011. I think that has only grown in the intervening time. When I was there, many forms of social media were intermittently banned in Iran. At the moment, Twitter is theoretically banned, although the president, Pezeshkian, used X just the other day to communicate with his own people. So there's a lot of confusion and hypocrisy. People find ways around. The Iranian people are incredibly resourceful when it comes to bypassing the restrictions put upon them. And I think that will continue. I imagine at the moment that the various forms of social media they are managing to use are being used a lot to coordinate the protests. There are other forms of social media which are widely used, such as Telegram within Iran. But I frequently receive messages in many different media, social media, from friends and contacts in Iran. So, yes, I think you're absolutely right. Social media has changed the way these protests are coordinated and are run, and their effectiveness too.
Nicholas Hopton, thank you very, very much indeed for joining me this morning. We should be watching events in Iran with interest on GB News. Thank you. Our Friends of GB News poll can vote in our... Friends of GB News can vote in our poll this morning. And earlier I asked, should Sir Keir Starmer condemn President Trump's capture of President Maduro? The results are in. 5% of you said yes and 95% of you said no. You could answer that yes-no question, unlike Darren Jones earlier. Thank you very much to all of my guests today. Up next, of course, as ever, at 11 is GB News on Sunday with Michael Portillo. Michael, Happy New Year to you. Stripy blazer, love it. What's coming up on today's show?
Happy New Year, Camilla. Inevitably, Venezuela. We're going to try and get some straight opinions on Venezuela. And like you, I think it's very important we shouldn't forget Iran either, so we're going to be talking about that. We're not going to neglect the arts. We're going to be looking at the future in 2026 of opera and theatre. And we're just coming up to 12th night. And on 12th night, people go wassailing. So I'm going to be discovering how you wassail.
Very exciting. 12th night, I've got to get my Christmas decorations down. Look, it's going to be a very action-packed 2026, so do stay tuned to GB News and my show. I will be back next week, 9:30. Up next is Michael Portillo after your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. A really cold start to Sunday morning. Temperatures down to -9 degrees in Oxfordshire and plenty of crisp winter sunshine thanks to Arctic air across the UK at the moment, but also some snow.